Hello, this is your host Akhil Navluri, and welcome to the brand new episode of the Space podcast series. In this podcast episode, I'm super thrilled and honored to be collaborating with one of the most eminent and prominent industry leaders of the IT space, Mr. Daniel Melin, who happens to be the business development and strategist for the company Safespring. And also, he's based out of Stockholm, Sweden. So, Daniel, it gives me an absolute pleasure to welcome you to this podcast initiative of mine. So, Daniel, how are you doing, and how are the pre Christmas vibes in Stockholm at the moment?
Well, thank you very much, Akil, for inviting me to the podcast. Sweden at the moment, or Stockholm at the moment, is of course the most boring part of the year because everything is just grey and dark and too little sun. So
I
this
understand
is
that.
yeah. I hope you can send some sun from India.
Yes, as I can. I would definitely love to. So, I mean, it's pretty fine here. You call it as winter, but if you just see outside, you don't see anything like winter. I feel, it's more like what do I say? That it's more like the Australian summer, that India is getting intertwined with its winter. So, a lot of relatability factor there.
Yeah, you never really know. So right now it's like 5+, but tomorrow it could be 5-. You never know. But there's
Oh,
no snow. There's no snow yet, but it should be. But
okay.
I think climate change has no. It's shown itself.
That is true. That is true. Absolutely true. All right, Daniel. So you have given me a complete insight about the pre-Christmas vibes in Stockholm. So on this note, without any further ado, let's kick off with our podcast session. All right. So Daniel, can you give me a complete timeline of yours in the IT industry?
Yes, but it's quite long. For many years, I think sometimes it's interesting sort of why you get into things or why you didn't. For me, it started with my dad bringing home a Commodore 64 when I was 13, which is 1983, which is a long way away. And that piqued my interest. What kind of thing is this? And it was sort of fairly new with the home computers. And as many people who used the Commodore 64, they were all in the same vein. I think they were sort of interested. Sort of the computer just had the blinking cursor said, "Try to find out what you can do with me," a kind of computer. Of course, very very basic, but I still follow the Commodore 64 scene, which is very very interesting to see
Okay.
the new development that is already sort of done. But that's going too much into that.
Hmm.
But then I started working with hardware, with data centers at different places within the government, within the private sector, and hardware was fine and interesting. And doing a lot of networking, worked for American and Canadian companies within the networking business, until I sort of got fed up with being at a provider of equipment, mainly because there's just one truth, and the truth is what the company is selling. And of course, that's fine. There's not an issue with it. But finally got sort of bored because I met customers and I wanted to say, well, there's many solutions that you can buy, and ours is not always the best.
Okay.
Because that's always true as a vendor. You have what you have and you sell what you sell. So I became a consultant because I realized that if I'm a consultant, I can go out to a customer and help them and look at sort of the market and try to find what is really best for the specific use case. And I stayed a consultant for 11 years
Hmm.
for because it was fun. It was interesting to be at many different places, different types of industry and government, and try to help out. And during that term, I came in contact with the public procurement law many times, and I got the possibility to go into position within the government doing framework agreements. So we procured large framework
Oh,
agreements for the whole public sector in Sweden. And I did that for software, for cloud, for open source, for data centers, for also I think 11 years. Yeah, and also that was also interesting. You get a lot of insight into how public sector works. and how from small municipalities to the really large ones.
Yeah.
And you see again all the things that are issues and things that organizations try to solve. Which was really interesting to have seen, because you get a broad understanding and not just for one organization or for one need. You
All
get
right.
sort of the view of many different needs. And I think that shaped me quite a bit in my understanding on how complex things are. And for me, I'm just into IT. There are many, many other areas, of course, but you get a sort of a humility in that sense when you realize how complex things can be and how diverse things can be.
Yeah.
And after that, sort of we're getting into then I left there and got an opportunity to join the tax agency, which was an opportunity to go into the total defense part of the government and see how could the government, since the government runs on IT, everything is digitalized nowadays.
Yeah. Yeah.
And since the government is running on IT, how will the government be able to function during a serious crisis or war? Or you could even look at it sort of after the war. How do we make sure our most important data survives war? It's a bit depressing
Yeah.
in one sense, but again, what we've seen, because this started before before the full scale war in Ukraine, and that has changed a lot. Especially sort of the full scale war in Ukraine is, I would say, that's a deal breaker in Sweden and Swedish society. So much things have changed. How we
Yeah.
view things. We used to be the country who's always in peace. We have the world record in peace.
Yeah.
But now we're part of NATO,
Yeah.
and so many things have changed. And from that, there will always be peace. We will always be a peaceful country.
Yeah.
And now we are not so sure anymore. So the whole, I'm getting ahead of myself, but that's important. I think it's important, sort of where things are moving, and why I have moved is because of the quite high risk of Sweden being part of a war.
Right.
And war can come in many shapes and forms. Nowadays we have like kind of a hybrid warfare and not a military warfare waged against us. But anyway, so going back to the work at the tax agency. I mean that was some of the stuff I did, of course, is secrets I can't talk about. But the overall idea was to see how the infrastructure would look like, and the idea is that how could you build the IT infrastructure so it would function during war and survive war.
Yep.
But then about 2 years ago, I changed again and moved to what some people have said. Oh, you moved to the other side. If I talk to my old friends in the government, they say I moved to the dark side.
Okay.
I don't see it that way at all. But it's also so now I'm at Safespring, as you said, which is a small Swedish cloud service provider.
All right.
We're about, I think, 26 employees, spread out over Europe, which is interesting, really, to be in a very small company, but who is very, very good at technology. Compared to being at the tax agency, who was extremely large.
Yep.
So going from 10,000 something employees to 26 is a drastic change.
Huge change.
Yeah, definitely. And from going that there are sort of forms or information pages or intranet things that has documented everything, and there are rules for everything.
Yeah.
And everything is sort of laid out how everything is done. To coming to a small place where very few things are structured in that way, because it doesn't need to be. It's a lot of these things comes with size. So the larger the organization, the more structure is needed. So it's
Yep.
not, it's just, it has nothing to do with, many people think it has about being or working for the government or working for the private sector. But my
Yeah.
experience is that it's just size. If you're in a small public sector body, that is in a lot of ways will be much more similar to a small private company, and vice versa. So that sort of sums up. So today I'm a business developer. I try
Mm-hmm.
to find new areas for the company, new partners, doing framework agreements, trying to make the company more visible, which is always a hard thing for a small company. You don't have the marketing muscles that large organizations have. So how do you become visible in the market, and that the potential customers are aware that you even exist?
Yep. Yep.
That's a hard nut to crack. And so a lot of the things I do is
Mm-hmm.
things that I like this podcast. I try to be very open. I try to talk in many places, even if it's just a few people or if there's very sort of a lot of people. It doesn't
Yep.
really matter. I talk to people who are lawyers, who are IT people, who do archiving, I don't know, GDPR people, management people. Doesn't really matter, because I think a lot of the discussions I'm having is transcends just IT. But I think we'll get into that. That was a long rambling start, but maybe it sets the tone or makes what we'll discuss next more understandable, maybe.
100%. That's a beautiful timeline, Daniel. Now, Daniel, how would you like to, brief about your roles and responsibilities of being a business development and strategist at your company, Safespring? And you were just talking about, this particular thing, right? That it's a cloud service provider, talking about Safespring. So how do you intertwine, both of these together?
I think the sort of the overall thing is sort of what I said, but I think it's an interesting role to have, to try the things are sort of to try to be visible and also try to get into people's minds, sort of partners, potential customers, and to be shown, to be seen, and to be seen as a thought leader, and sort of that SafeSpring is a company that is ahead of the curve, that we do things early on.
Okay.
And to get that message out, that's a lot
Mhm.
of the work I do, which is, it's not so structured in that sense, and sort of
Mhm.
that fits me, because that you never know from each day to another day. Sort of, it's the thing about not being structured is that it just comes an email or someone writes on LinkedIn on, here's an idea, or have you seen this, or I've been doing this for so long, and I'm doing sort of this kind of outreach. I did that at the Tex agency as well, a lot of public speaking and so forth. So over the years, I've I think I've reached a point where
Mhm.
a lot of people, especially within IT or law, that is sort of IT related law, sort of, a lot of people do know, like at least briefly, who I am and what I'm trying to push, and that gives me some kind of platform to stand on and to discuss things. An important thing was sort of by doing this is also to be aware that most of the time, sort of think in a way that most of the time you're wrong. That's a good stance. You find things, you hear things, and this is sort of what goes into my role as well in doing things. Is you notice things, but it's hard to know if they are true or false. But usually they are somewhere in between.
Right.
And that's an interesting point to be in and sort of say, hey, I found this, but I also found this sort of pieces of information. And then to try to put it out there or talk to people and say, well, A seems to be true, but B also seems to be true. Isn't this fascinating that we can have both A and B at the same time? Because in some way maybe they contradict each other, or they complement each other, or you can do connect the dots kind of things where you say, well, A seems to be true and everyone agrees, B seems to be true, everyone agrees, and C seems to be true and everyone agrees. Then and sort of something follows that if A, B, and C is true, then we can come to a conclusion maybe, or a good understanding of where we should go or what we should do. And that's also an interesting thing to try to do. That's sort of a typical human thing to do, is that you want cause and effect, and you want to see patterns in things.
Indeed.
But that doesn't mean that your patterns are correct.
Yeah.
So to be open-minded in that sense that you think, or I think that, I've seen the light. I've found this, and this is really interesting, and I think this is true. And then someone else comes along and say, hey, Daniel, you're wrong because you missed D or X. Or you didn't take all of these kinds of things into consideration. Or, your things are correct, but I disagree anyway for some reason. All of these discussions are interesting, and they are usually fruitful. There is, of course, some people who is not interested into discussions. They are just interested to say their point over and over again. But that sort of borders on stupidity. But there's also but it doesn't help anyone to just claim. You can claim that the Earth is flat all over again, and you can say that, but it's just tiresome. But it's interesting when you meet someone especially someone who knows very, very different things than I know. So, for example, speaking to you, Akhil, you have another background. You live in a different country. You know all kinds of things that I have no clue about. I don't even know some of your knowledge. I didn't even know it was a knowledge that someone could have, and that it's sort of platitudes, it's sort of simple because it's like, sure, it's always true. But I think it's sort of the idea of having that attitude of always realizing that you know very, very little about the grand scheme of things. And there is so much things out there. And the world is so complex.
Yes,
so
that's true.
So don't think that you know best, or that you have all the answers. You will just end up looking stupid in the long run. So and it comes back to my role of just doing that and doing the discussion, because the discussion is what's interesting. Sometimes I do sort of an analogy. I don't know if you're into boats, but you know at least the idea of having a boat with a motorboat or a sailing boat. Usually people with a motorboat, they want to go somewhere. They start at a point, they drive the boat, and it's very noisy, but they arrive to a port somewhere, and then they arrive, and that's fine. People who have a sailing boat usually is not interested in the same sense of arriving. They're interested in the travel. So it's more about handling the boat, handling the sails, and all the things that you have to think about having a sailing boat. It's more complex. So they're interested in doing sailing. Sailing is the part. It's not sort of arriving at a port or a harbor.
Makes sense.
And that kind of mentality is also interesting to look at things as it's not so important to reach a conclusion or find out what is the absolute truth. It's more interesting to discuss with other people about how things move and how things change and different perspectives of everything. That is much more valuable in the long run for everyone involved, because everyone will take pieces of new information with them after all of these discussions or things. And to put a sort of a really going off your question here, but that's one of the issues with social media, where you have algorithms that makes you stay in a filter bubble. Then you don't get all the other views that you really are needed, or which everyone needs. So if you stay in the filter bubble, you will end up thinking that you're right and you have the answers. And the only thing you really know is that you don't have any answer to any question at all in the end.
Yep.
But that's far off.
Makes sense. So you just gave me the idea of, having multiple options. Let's say, you're taking on A, you're taking on B, you're taking on C and D and so on. But suppose, you're given complete options of, let's say, A to L, L options, like A, like alphabet A to, alphabet L, all the options together with you. So how much time does it, take for you to decide on all the options? And and if you have so many options, do you, select everything, based on the priority basis, like, this is the right priority that we need to start with, or how is your approach like?
Well, I start with that. That's a good question. But we have such a situation at the moment, and in many countries, and that is in the IT industry. We are today sort of most countries are dependent on China and dependent on the United States for different pieces of the IT technology stack, hardware and software and models and things. And if you want to look at this, you have a full alphabet, because you will have technical reasons. You can say that sort of product A is better than product B, maybe. But then you can sort of add things. But you can add environmental issues. So maybe product A, it's better, but it's produced in a really, really bad factory with sort of no sense for the environment. Maybe even using children who works in the factory, and you can think of all kinds of things. And then you start to feel that, well, product A, it's better, but it feels really, really bad to buy product A, because the vendor behind product A is really, really, really bad. Yeah. I'm not sort of making a case that's sort of similar to reality here, just to be clear, but it's just sort of a way of thinking. And then maybe you sort of buy product B instead because of that reason. Then you can think short term and long term. Some products or services are used short term, and then you make some decisions. And some are, you say, well, we will live with this for a very long time. Then you have to think through sort of what kind of product or service seems to be long term stable, long term maintenance, and those kinds of things. Sometimes, especially when it comes to services, you will get into the legal reasons or legality. So you could say, well, this service is really good, but it has the provider behind the service is bound by a law in their home country that says that the service provider has to give access to the data to their government, or help their government to infiltrate the customer's information.
All right.
Or that employees at the service provider has to help the government to do things. It's seldom, but there are countries that has laws in that vein.
Right.
We don't have to go into the politics yet.
Yeah.
But then like for Europe we have the GDPR for
Right.
data privacy. I know India has a similar law nowadays that is sort of a copy of GDPR, and many other countries do as well. So that's another one, and say, well, yeah, this is a good service, but it doesn't protect the personal data of the people who sort of is in a database, for example. And then again, service A may be better, but it's not lawful to use. Or you think it's not lawful to use. So that's another way of looking into things. And then comes what is things that has become more apparent nowadays, and that's the geopolitical side. That, well, again, service A may be better than service B, but it has a too large geopolitical risk involved with it, because the service could be shut off, or there could be a threat of that the service will be shut off for geopolitical reasons, that a government in one country tries to influence the government in another country.
Yep.
And today technology is sometimes used as a weapon, and say we can disable technology for a country. That's a good example. There is it was Denmark, where the United States threatened Denmark that they wanted Greenland, and Denmark, the Danish government did a short study and realized that if the American government would force 4 American companies to shut off their services to everything in Denmark, then the Danish society as a whole will stop functioning within a few hours. That was sort of what the Danish government said. And if you have that threat against you, then you act accordingly. Even though you can say, well, how large is that threat? Well, hard to know, but probably quite small. But again, if it happens, then the impact is sort of, you can't imagine if a country sort of stops functioning. So that's another way of looking into things that is today. We also have then, of course, the discussion about competition policy and how politics and law and policies should be in a country. To, in some sense, every government wants to help the companies in their country to grow and to export and to be better and bring in more tax money to their country, to their government. So that's also a thing to take into consideration nowadays, that in a lot of sense you can say that, well, service A is better than service B, but service B is produced by our own country or by a really, really friendly neighboring country. So that makes it better for that reason, and say that is we will see companies close by. They will earn more money, so they will hire more people. They will pay more taxes instead of just buying services from some country somewhere, and you don't get much in return, except of course you get a service, and the service may be really good, but there's other things at play. So, and if you always just buy things from abroad, then you have no competition yourself, or after a while you lose the possibility to control your own future, because you don't have any engineers left that knows how to do some things. So you're left to the mercy of of other countries' governments and hope they are nice. Yeah.
Yes.
And they
Yes.
may be,
Yeah.
but 10 years from now,
Yeah.
you don't know. They could be not nice, to put it very, very
It keeps on changing.
simple
Yeah.
terms. So I'm trying to sort of put here how complex things are just to buy IT products and IT services today. And again, in all of these cases, you were asking sort of how do I come to a conclusion? I seldom come to a conclusion, but the issue I see is that people try to, a lot of people try to narrow things down to, but is the service legal or not? If it's legal, it's okay. Or IT tech people is like, well, how is the encryption? Or how fast is the product? Or some tech stuff. And all of these are sort of, they're fine by itself, but it's too narrow to discuss things if they are sort of, if it's good technology or if it's legal. You have to bring in all the other things as well, because we all have a responsibility to think through what we are buying, and that shapes society in many ways.
All right.
And the last thing with this is that if you have, again, say that IT service A is better than B, but if a lot of you start to, so B maybe is sort of good enough. It's not really good, but it's good enough. You can use it. But if a lot of customers starts to buy that because of reasons, then they will, of course, they will earn more money. They will hire more engineers. They will develop their service faster. So over time, it will be better. It will go from good enough to good. Maybe again, service A is better, but as soon as you start to invest in things, they usually get better over time. So you have to see the market potential that you can change things. But if you just look at things as a snapshot and say, well, service A is so much better than B, so I'll buy A. Again, that's a narrow way of looking into things. And again, you take very few areas of knowledge into consideration when you do the choice.
Yeah.
And I try to really make people aware of all the different things that I think that you should think through, that since sort of your choices matter. That was a really long answer again.
That was a very brief description on that, Daniel. That completely gives me a sum up on the point. Now, Daniel, how would you like to share your experience of being part of the of the tax agency, like previous, I mean, in few years ago, like where you were a cloud and a data center strategist there.
Yeah, I've said a lot of the things before, but some of the parts was doing like clouds, which I didn't speak about, was the cloud strategy part. So we had a team with different profiles within the tax agency, who was called the cloud group. And the cloud group had someone from legal, someone from procurement, some IT architects, some from security, some from information security and strategists. And I'm probably missing some here, but you get the point. So you have a group with people from different parts of the organization. And it was an interesting thing that when somewhere within the organization, someone wanted to buy a cloud service, this cloud group looked at the service from all angles. So the person from the legal department would look at the service from a legal perspective and come with that person's conclusions. And the IT architect looked sort of how is it functioning, or how should it be interoperable with something? Will it exchange data with something that we already have? And the IT security person would look at it sort of, will this handle anything that is sensitive and such? So it was a good thing to have this multi-competence group, and that was, I think that was a fairly successful model. It was already there when I joined, so I don't take any credit for that, but it was a smart construction, and I think it's still there. The other part, as I said before, I can't talk that much about, but it's things are moving along. That is sort of public information. That things are moving along in Sweden, where the government will centralize a lot of the governmental IT in some shape or form, and part of that is to be able to function during crisis and war. So it's not done with the purpose of saving money for the government, which is a common theme, that if you centralize things, you have the idea that this will be cheaper. And I think this will be cheaper in the long run, that the government do centralize IT. But short term, it's of course more expensive. But if you look at it from a defense perspective, that things must function even during war, then you realize things will be more complex and will be more expensive. And again, it was really an interesting journey to be part of, and to look at society and look at a country from that perspective, on how many things are interconnected within society. And when you start to see that, if someone says, well, A needs to function, but what is needed for A to function? You maybe need electricity, probably. You maybe need people, and those people maybe need to be at a specific location in a specific house, or have specific clearance. Also one of my favorites is that if someone says, well, both parents to smaller kids needs to be at different places to work in, because there is a crisis or war, so maybe they need to be soldiers or working in a hospital or something that is sort of war related. But where will their kids go? Someone needs to take care of them. So maybe you still need like kindergartens. Who will work there?
Yeah.
And the kindergarten will need food and electricity and so forth. So there's so many layers of when you start to think about it in society, and that needs to function. And they are very, very interconnected, and more so over time. And now with everything is digitalized, then everything is dependent on IT systems, dependent on data centers, dependent on software, and people being able to run these things and protect them from threats. So that's a lot of the things that was what I was doing at the tax agency, was being a little small part in that process, in trying to move the government to a better position.
That's really insightful, Daniel. Now, Daniel, like for the main point of our podcast session, I'm pretty much keen to understand this. Like, what is your take, on the intersection between IT and the geopolitics?
I think that's one of the most interesting topics you can have today. Yeah,
indeed.
Because so we're laughing because I think we're laughing because there is it's a when you're frightened, you tend to laugh.
All right.
Yeah, but that's a sort of a coping mechanism, and you need to joke about things. It's like
indeed,
but you sometimes you have to. So we have a situation right now where the large global players are moving in very interesting directions. India is also always interesting to follow, who sort of is a very, very large player in a global scale. and tries, from my perspective, tries to be friends with the United States and China and Russia at the same time. That's an interesting balancing act that India is taking. Most of the time I can understand it, but I wonder sort of over time, will it be possible, or will India be forced to more align itself, or is India too big to sort of, you don't have to? So that's the first one. I think India is so interesting to see where it goes. And then you have China. So with all the geopolitics they play, they are a huge player, and they want to. This is just public information or public knowledge, but how they want to that Taiwan will be part of China, but they're also investing in a lot of countries in Africa and South America, and try to create a larger influence, especially competing with the United States in influence. So China has sort of taken over from Russia and being the sort of the other part that the United States has to compete against. We have Russia, who is nowadays a very, very poor country. And again, the war has taken its toll. I read yesterday that over 1 million soldiers is lost in the war, in wounded or casualties or prisoners of war. So the figures in the Ukraine war is staggering. And I wonder sort of course, this takes a toll on Russia. I don't get into the politics of why or why not, but you can just see that the economy in Russia is taking a hit, a major hit, and it makes Russia weaker as a geopolitical player. And then you have United States, which is the really big change, especially this year, where the current administration works very, very different from compared to all the administrations in the 80s, 90s, and 2000s before. Again, I don't go into politics, but it's a big change, and they act very differently. They push Europe to do more themselves. I think that's in maybe the way it's done could be done better, but it's still true that Europe needs to stand on its own 2 feet. That's a wake-up call for many European countries, and I think that's good. So we need to have more of our own defense, more of our own IT industry. That's where things that I look into, of course.
Yes.
But with the United States comes really where the geopolitics intertwine with IT, because there's so many, especially in the cloud market and the AI market, the United States is very dominant. And then we have sort of the changes in the government that sort of, it makes it hard for non-US organizations to use American technology over time, because it will come with strings attached that for geopolitical reasons or for defense reasons, you don't want these strings. So I think we will see a gradual change, and we can see that in where things are moving in the European Commission, for example, where they've realized that it must be easier for European companies, or especially the European public sector, to buy European IT.
Yep.
And we will see things that will change like that. So I'm a globalist myself, and I really think free trade is a good thing, but it's just currently not possible. China is, I mean, the Chinese market is open where China wants it to be open, and closed where they want it to be closed, and that goes the same for the United States.
All right. Yeah.
So Europe, unfortunately, I think will have to go the route of a bit closing itself in the same way. I hope we don't close ourselves too much, because we're still interested in free trade, and I also see India as one of the and Brazil as also countries that is fairly large and wants free trade. And I think we'll see a kind of new geopolitical constellation, maybe, where sort of Australia, Canada, Brazil, India, Europe, maybe sort of where sort of democratic countries, but who wants to be more staking out their own path or taking care of their own future, and not being dependent on China or the United States. And because you don't want to be stuck in that place where you're too dependent on one of them or both. So that may be a political shift that we will see, that countries that usually weren't that close will get closer.
All right.
So we can talk for hours about that. This is
absolutely. Thinking offline we can.
I'm sort of thinking a bit about what I'm saying, sort of, because it's not interesting. It's not interesting to give sort of my point of view on what I think is good or bad. I'm more trying to say what I see is moving and what I think will happen, or it has sort of a reasonable probability to happen.
Cool. Then, okay. Then, I mean, now, Daniel, like, understanding this one, I feel EuroStack. I mean, I've heard a lot about EuroStack. So, I mean, from your end, I just wanted to understand what is a EuroStack, and I'm really very proud of knowing this, that Europe is getting inspired from India, and I see there's a lot of cultural exchange happening between, and let's say the ideology exchange happening between the two regions. So now, how did you get first involved into this initiative? Like, what went with that?
So for me, I noticed the buzz around EuroStack in February, I think, and sort of I joined. First off, EuroStack is not nowadays. It is actually a non-profit in Germany, I think, but that's for legal reasons. But most of the time, it has just been a bunch of industry people coming together, and the initiator behind all of this, and the one who's been in charge of everything, is an Italian economist called Cristina Caffarra. She has done a fantastic job of steering this, and in just a year we've reached a lot of people, a lot of politicians. We've seen changes, we've seen policies who is very influenced by what we've been pushing, which is amazingly short amount of time. So I've been very proud of being part of that, and especially pushing in the Nordics, and try to be, again, talking into conferences, trying to reach awareness in policy circles and in politics in the Nordics around EuroStack. But also, the background is the name is also derived from IndiaStack, as far as I've learned. But I think it's sort of similar goals, as far as I understood, that the IndiaStack has where the Indian government realized that India was too dependent on foreign technologies in areas where the Indian government saw that this is not perfect for the Indian people. So you started to, in the Indian government took some ideas and started to do things within India and with full control. This is always sort of a hard thing, because on one hand, it's understandable that the government wants control over things, and that another country couldn't blackmail you or threaten you or or do things. But that's, I mean, it is a reality. But on the other hand, it derives the private sector from competing. So it has both sides. So I can understand why it's done, but I can also understand the people who are criticizing it and saying, well, the private sector in one sense can never compete with the government if the government is doing things in a certain way. That's not sort of the idea behind EuroStack. The idea behind EuroStack is an industry initiative. And the important thing is that we want industry to grow within Europe. And there's three pillars behind that. One is to buy European. And what we want there is that the public sector within Europe would be mandated to buy a portion of their IT from European IT companies. Again, coming back to what I discussed before, that because then they will grow, they will hire more people, they will pay more taxes, and we will get better products and services.
Absolutely. That's right.
Yeah, so protecting a bit of the market, maybe a third, is an idea to protect that to European companies. And again, China and the United States is almost fully protected. So it's very, very hard for non-US companies to sell to the American government, for example, in IT. So we would do it much less than China and the United States is doing. The other part is sell European, and that's a push against the industry to say in IT industry in Europe needs to be much better. We need to maybe buy each other to become bigger in some cases. We need to be interoperable with each other, and we need to combine our different solutions because there's many companies, but they provide just a small part of the whole stack. So by joining forces together with other companies, the joint offering could be interesting to customers. So industry needs to be much, much better and bigger. And the last part is fund European, where it's a push that we need more free money in the European market that can be invested in European IT companies. So again, they will have risk money or venture money in different cases, so they can do things quicker by having more money. So those are the three pillars. So in that sense, it differs from EuroStack, where it's more, as I see it, more of a governmental push, and the government has done electronic IDs and digital wallets and things for the Indian people. So they differ in execution, but a lot of the ideas behind it and sort of the end goal is quite similar as I see it.
Amazing. Daniel, who came up with this idea of the EuroStack, or which country? I mean, there are so many countries in Europe. So I am trying to understand like which country took this initiative that, we have to start it. So whose brainchild was this?
I don't really know the answer. What I do know is that the whole idea was started in a hearing in the European Parliament about a year ago. And the initiative was from some parliamentarians in the European Parliament, and they invited some industry players and professors and so forth. And one of those people were Christina Cafara, who was in that hearing. And after that, that was sort of the starting point of EuroStack, and she had an idea of how to do the EuroStack with the industry. And then started to talk to people that she knew, and when it grew, then people like me found her and found what she was doing, and I thought that her idea was a really good one, so I wanted to help out and try to push the message and work with her and the others in the team, or what I could call it, the group. So that's about as far as I know of the history.
That's fantastic. Is there any inside talk that Europe and India are going to have a collaboration, with respect to a stack? Like India stack is there now, Europe stack is coming. So in the future, is there any intertwining approach, between these two? Anytime.
I do hope so. So there's a lot of really, really good Indian companies in the IT sector. So I think that free trade between India and Europe would be really beneficial for both Europe and India.
Simply. Yeah.
Currently, or up to now, there's been mostly that India has done outsourcing things like Tata. So they handle a lot of large like banks or industry companies. They're handling their IT, or if they have old IT stuff that's outsourced to Indian companies. That has been sort of the current theme. that it's cheap, sort of it's seen as cheaper than finding companies within Europe doing this. But I think that will change over time because India has so much things going. So I think that sort of Indian companies doing more cutting edge things will be of interest. And I think vice versa. There's a lot of European IT that would be of interest to Indian organizations to buy as well. And since we're still all just democratic countries and we're all interested in free trade, I see that as also a natural connection. I'm not into politics. I'm just sort of thinking out loud, but you have to find friends where you can find them. And from my perspective, India and Europe should be good friends going forward.
Yes. They will. And I'm pretty sure, those kind of things also will come pretty soon, for the Indian IT sector, pretty sure. So, I mean, I just love the insight you have just given on this, Daniel. So, Daniel, before we conclude our podcast session, let's take a lighter route. All this while, I was completely bombarding you with questions about your journey, about IT law, then, asking you all the use cases, if you have options of, choosing between A and L, how would you? But you just gave such amazing insights on that. So now at this moment, I'll go in a very lighter approach, asking you questions on your likes and interests, completely excluding from the conversation that we just had.
Sure.
So I'll begin with the first question of the rapid fire round, Daniel. So are you ready with it?
Okay, go ahead.
All right. So Daniel, what is your favorite hobby?
I think listening to music.
Okay.
I can't play. I can't play any instrument, and I can't sing. And I can't dance. But music is what's always there.
Okay. That's perfect. So if I have to, give you three choice, I mean, if I have to ask you this question, who would be your favorite three musical artists? Who would they be?
Oh, if I would be here, it's not. I don't think they're really a top three. But actually, Bloody Wood from New Delhi is really one of the bands that I really enjoy. They're fantastic, fantastic. Right. They combine sort of some Indian traditional instruments with the new metal.
Okay.
So yeah, you need to check them out. Maybe they are weird just because they're from Delhi. I don't know, but they're touring the world and they've been to Stockholm. So I've seen them live, and it was a really, really good experience. And also being at a gig in Stockholm where like half of the audience looked like they were from India. That's not a common thing, and going to a metal concert. Yeah, but really, really good. Three. It becomes so much of sort of the current things. But Marillion is a sort of progressive rock band from the UK that's been with me since the 80s. Always there, always interesting. Are sort of getting almost better all the time. Fritz Kalkbrenner, I would say, is a Berlin-based DJ who sings like soul on top of techno beats things, sort of.
Right.
He's been there for a really, really long time in my life as well. It's really calm. That's a bit soothing. So yeah, then I'll stop there. I can talk for hours about this, but that's three bands or three artists that is really, really good.
We can talk about your musical interest, suppose when I come to Stockholm and, meet you in person, then we can, go hours and hours talking about it for sure.
You're welcome.
Yeah. So now, I mean, I totally understand that, Sweden has a lot of beautiful music artists, they're coming from the likes of ABBA, then there's a musical artist who's called Ted, and then there is Roxette. So, I mean, you don't hear any of these, songs from these bands?
A little bit, but mostly Swedish metal bands, I would say.
Okay.
Yeah, like Opeth or the Halo Effect or Entombed or In Flames or there's so many good Swedish metal bands.
Nice.
But I'm not so much into Swedish pop music. Of course, I know them, I've heard them, and they're good, but they are not fantastic.
Okay. opinion. I totally understand that everyone has their opinion on that. Now, since that Daniel, I am of Indian origin and I come from India. So I'm pretty keen to ask you this, like, what is your favorite Indian food which you always like to have?
Oh, first off, my favorite food is Indian food. If
Oh,
Yeah, I had a discussion with the colleagues several years ago, former colleague, and we're discussing sort of if you were only allowed to eat one type of sort of food, not a dish, but one type
mhm.
of food for the rest of your life
Yeah.
and nothing else, what would you choose? And we were both Indian curries. That would be sort of the choice.
Oh,
I Yeah, and both my kids, they are grown up now, but sort of the our staple dish to eat together is when me doing curries. And I've been to Kerala in India for a cooking class for a week
Kerala.
with
Okay.
people, and was
Good.
wonderful. That was very different Indian cooking than
Yeah,
what I'm
it
doing
is.
myself.
Yeah.
Um, I'm mostly vegetarian, but I must say that using lamb in a curry is, I'm sad to say, but it is fantastic.
It's all right.
Uh,
No worries.
otherwise, otherwise, paneer is a really interesting
Yes.
ingredient to use as well. But also to experiment with different sorts of chilies. And how you can sort of explore the base curry with different nuts or different vegetables. You can do so much with it, and also how
Mhm.
spicy you want it, of course, which is so classic. But it's interesting also how you make it spicy. You
Yeah.
can have like full on attack, or you could
Yeah.
have it grows until you're at the pain point where you just
Of
sweat it.
course.
It's
It's
so
extreme,
interesting.
Indian food starts from here and then it ends there. So, too many choices there.
Yeah.
But but I'm pretty sure, Daniel, our listeners from India would definitely love your answers. They'll really, really love that, you like the Indian food, you like our food. So it's pretty glad to hear. Even I'm also so happy hearing it.
And just speak the truth.
Absolutely. So, if I ask you, like, what is your favorite Swedish food, then what would that be?
Swedish
Swedish food, Swedish dish.
Swedish food. Sill. Sill is there's sort of small fishes
Hmm.
that is you take them raw and then you put them into like not vinegar really, but you have sugar and sort of vinegar,
Hmm. Hmm.
and you store them for quite a while, and then you eat them at every holiday, so Christmas
Yeah.
or midsummer or Easter. There's always the sill who is brought up, and you eat it with boiled potatoes and leek and some other stuff to it. But it's an interesting kind of fish to
Hmm.
eat. But and you can do them in many ways. You can do
All
them with
right.
mustard or with tomato or with spices or with lime or ginger or with garlic, or you can combine. And the manufacturers of these seal is getting more and more creative. A lot of them is really interesting. It's still the same fish, but
Okay.
yeah.
That's interesting, Daniel. Now, Daniel, the next two questions to you. So, what is your favorite movie franchise?
I would say zombie movies.
Okay. Zombie movies. All
So
right.
I don't know if that's so answering sort of a franchise, but I've always been interested in zombie movies, even going back to the old Dawn of the Dead and a lot of where things are going. I think the zombie movies from the 70s and 80s are the most interesting because they're so sloppily made. And the zombies are so slow, you can sort of walk and just get away from them.
Yeah.
But nobody does. They just stand still and screams and get eaten by the zombies. And that's fascinating.
Right.
It's
That's a
so
pretty unique choice, I would say.
Yeah. But there is also, again, coming back to India, I've seen a lot of modern Indian movies.
Hmm.
that is
Okay.
not sort of that is not Bollywood at all.
Yeah. I got it.
What was that called? Three Idiots was a.
That's Bollywood. That's Bollywood.
So you've seen it as well?
Yes, I've seen it like, years back. It came in 2009, and when the
Yeah,
movie released, I watched it then.
yeah, I loved it. It was a movie that was all over the place. It's sort of a movie who shouldn't be able to exist. It's like a comedy. It's very
Yeah.
sad. It's a drama.
Yeah.
It's sort of you at one point you're almost crying. 10 minutes later you're laughing,
Yeah, laughing. Yeah.
and it shouldn't be possible in one movie to sort of go in all these directions,
Yes,
but it
yes.
does, and it works, and it's beautiful. I thought really, really good movie.
Right. Yeah. It's a very good movie indeed. So the final question to you, I mean, what is your favorite holiday destination and the country actually that, blew you off, that, completely impressed you the most?
India.
India. Okay. Which
Yeah.
part of India did you like the most?
Oh, I've only been to two places, and that's Delhi and Kerala.
Kerala.
Um,
Okay.
and Delhi, I will not visit again. Uh, Coming from small Sweden, where people behave in one way, and
Mhm.
Delhi is the complete opposite.
Okay.
The amount of people and cows and cars and trucks and bikes and the noise was sort of just too much. Very, very interesting to see and to
Yeah.
be there, but I don't think I will go back. Um,
Okay.
Kerala was sort of the opposite, where people were so nice. The nature was gorgeous, the ocean, the
Okay.
food. That was sort of everything. That I was even thinking, sort of when I retire, that's sort of the one of the
Oh.
few places I could say, well, this is a place. If I'm not staying in Sweden, which I think I will do, but
Yeah.
Kerala would be sort of a place where I could see myself retiring to.
Absolutely. That's a beautiful choice, and I've been to Kerala, and I just love the place so much. So yeah, that's a fantastic choice, Daniel. So Daniel, finally, thank you so much for making time from your busy schedule and being part of my podcast initiative. It was a lovely conversation throughout, and every insight shared by you, pertaining to the IT law, talking about your ideologies on how you started your journey, and then about what was the strategy that you have applied, and talking about different companies, and then talking about EuroStack. That EuroStack thing completely blew my mind. So I just love the conversation, and that is the thing. If something has to be bookmarked in this conversation, then that has to be the EuroStack. So that was one lovely conversation that we had in this podcast session. So thank you so much, Daniel. Once again, it was a lovely thing having you in this session.
And thank you, Akhil. This was really, really lovely conversation, and I will be happy to be in contact with you further on and see where things goes.
Definitely, definitely. And yes, we will definitely stay in touch, and I'll definitely visit you in Stockholm in the future when I come to Europe. So for sure.
Perfect.
All right. So so on this note, listener, this is your host Akhil Navluri signing off. We would be back with another podcast episode with another eminent industry leader very soon. Till then, keep listening. Goodbye, stay tuned, and au revoir. Thank you.